How can one impulsive night at the club unravel a marriage so completely? What happens when the joke is on you, and the only person left laughing is the one you betrayed? The morning I saw that envelope on our kitchen counter, I realized that proving I could still get attention had cost me everything I actually cared about. My name is Isolde Greaves, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized advertising agency downtown, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had a pretty good life. I was married to Ewan, a software engineer who's 4 years older than me, and we had an 8-year-old daughter named Lila. We lived in a modern apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and granite countertops that I loved to show off on Instagram. But somewhere along the way, things got stale. Ewan had become distant, always buried in his laptop after work, barely looking up when I walked into a room. We hadn't been intimate in months. I felt invisible in my own home, like I was just another piece of furniture he'd gotten used to ignoring. At 32, I still looked good. I worked out regularly, kept my blonde hair perfectly styled, and spent good money on clothes that showed off my figure. But my own husband seemed completely uninterested. That's how I ended up at the Perch on a Friday night in March, wearing a tight black dress and feeling reckless. "Come on, Isolde," my friend Tasha had said earlier that week. "When's the last time we went out? Just us girls, no husbands, no kids. You need to remember what it feels like to be yourself again." Tasha was 31, single, and always pushing me to be more adventurous. She worked in sales at the same agency and had this way of making everything sound like the most reasonable idea in the world. "I don't know," I'd said, but even as I protested, I was already imagining it. The music, the attention, the feeling of being wanted again. "Ewan won't even notice you're gone," she'd said with a laugh. "He'll probably be grateful for the quiet so he can code in peace." That comment stung because it was probably true. So that Friday, I told Ewan I was having a girls' night out. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Okay," he said, "have fun. I'll put Lila to bed." That was it. No questions about where we were going or when I'd be home. No kiss goodbye. Nothing. The Perch was exactly what I needed that night. Loud music, dim lighting, and crowds of people having fun. Tasha and I found a spot at the bar, and within minutes, I felt more alive than I had in months. Men were looking at me, actually looking at me, like I was worth their attention. And then I met Luca. He was 29, with dark hair and the kind of easy smile that made you forget you were married. He was bartending that night, but also played guitar in a local band. He had this way of making me feel like the most interesting person in the room. "You're not from around here," he said, leaning across the bar to talk to me over the music. "What makes you say that?" I asked, twirling my hair like I was 22 again. "You've got this energy," he said, "like you're discovering something new about yourself tonight." He was right, and somehow he knew it just by looking at me. We talked between his drink orders. He told me about his music, his dreams of making it big. I told him about my work, leaving out the part about being married. For those few hours, I wasn't Ewan's wife or Lila's mom. I was just Isolde, and Luca was completely captivated by me. My phone buzzed with texts from my younger sister Maya throughout the night. She was 27 and always on social media, documenting everything. I saw her posting videos from across the club, and I hoped I wasn't in any of them, but honestly, I was having too much fun to care. "Dance with me," Luca said when his shift ended at midnight. I should have said no. I should have called an Uber and gone home to my family. Instead, I let him pull me onto the dance floor, his hands on my waist, his body pressed against mine. "You're married," he said, noticing my ring under the flashing lights. "Technically," I said, and I meant it. "What kind of marriage was it really when your husband treated you like a roommate?" "Technically doesn't sound very convincing," he said with that smile. "It's complicated," I said, which was the truth. We danced until the club closed. Then we went to his apartment. I told myself it was just one night, Just a reminder that I was still desirable, still worth pursuing. Ewan would never know, and I'd go back to my regular life with this secret confidence boost. It would be like a joke I was playing on the universe, proving I could still have any man I wanted. But when I woke up in Luca's bed at 6 in the morning, the joke didn't feel funny anymore. My phone was flooded with notifications, missed calls from Ewan, texts from Maya, Instagram tags I didn't remember agreeing to. Shit, I whispered, carefully getting out of bed without waking Luca. I called an Uber and spent the 20-minute ride home crafting my story. I'd crashed at Tasha's. We'd had too much wine, and I didn't want to wake Ewan by coming home late. Simple, believable, innocent. But when I walked into our apartment at 7:30 that morning, Ewan was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, fully dressed for work. His laptop was closed in front of him, and he was staring at his phone. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Sorry I'm so late. Tasha and I had way too much wine, and I didn't want to wake you." He looked up at me, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. His brown eyes, usually so warm, were completely cold. "How was your night?" he asked quietly. "Fun," I said, moving toward the coffee maker. "You know how it is with Tasha. We lost track of time." He said, still looking at his phone. I poured coffee with shaking hands, trying to figure out what he knew. Had someone seen me? Had Maya posted something incriminating? "Lila's still sleeping," he said. "I'll take her to soccer practice this morning since you're probably tired." "That's sweet of you," I said, relieved that he seemed to be buying my story. But then he stood up and walked past me toward the door, pausing just long enough to say, "Oh, and Isolde, next time you decide to have a girls' night, you might want to make sure Maya isn't posting videos of you making out with strangers on her Instagram story." My coffee mug slipped from my hands and shattered on the kitchen floor. The sound of that coffee mug hitting the floor echoed in my head for days afterward. Ewan had left for work without another word, and I'd spent the next hour cleaning up ceramic shards and trying to figure out how bad the damage really was. Maya's Instagram story was even worse than I'd imagined. There I was in my black dress, dancing with Luca, his hands all over me, laughing like I didn't have a care in the world. The timestamp showed it was posted at 1:47 a.m., and by the time I saw it, it had been viewed by over 200 people, including my husband. I called Maya immediately. "Oh my God, Maya, you have to delete that video." "Which one?" she asked, sounding completely unbothered. "The one of me at the club. Ewan saw it." "So, you were just dancing. It's not like you were doing anything that bad." "I'm married, Maya. It looks terrible." She laughed. "Maybe Ewan needs to see that other men find you attractive. Might wake him up a little." That was exactly the kind of response I expected from my sister. Maya had never been married, never had to navigate the complexities of a long-term relationship. To her, everything was just content for social media. "Please, just delete it," I begged. "Fine, but it's probably too late. People screenshot everything these days." She was right, of course. By Monday morning, I was getting looks at work that I couldn't quite interpret. My colleague, Leah, who worked in accounts, gave me a knowing smile when I walked past her office. "Fun weekend?" she asked with a smirk. "Just the usual," I said, trying to sound casual. But throughout that week, I kept catching people whispering when I walked by. Someone had clearly seen Maya's video and was spreading it around the office. The advertising world is smaller than people think, and gossip travels fast. Tasha, who had encouraged me to go out in the first place, suddenly seemed distant when I tried to talk to her about it. "Look, Isolde, maybe you should just lay low for a while," she said when I cornered her in the break room. "People are talking. What are they saying? Just, maybe you should focus on fixing things with Ewan instead of worrying about office gossip." That stung. Tasha had been the one pushing me to go out, to remember what it felt like to be myself again. Now she was acting like I'd done something terrible. At home, things were even worse. Ewan was polite but distant, speaking to me only when necessary, and spending most of his time either at work or in his home office with the door closed. When Lila asked why Daddy seemed sad, I told her he was just stressed about work. "Are you and Daddy fighting?" she asked one evening while I was helping her with homework. "No, sweetheart. Daddy's just busy with a big project." But Lila was smart for 8 years old. She could sense the tension in our apartment, the way Ewan and I moved around each other like strangers. My mother, Paula, called that Thursday to check in. "How are things going, honey?" "Fine," I said, not ready to explain the whole situation. "Maya mentioned you had a fun girls' night last weekend. It's good to see you getting out more. Marriage shouldn't mean giving up your social life." Of course, Maya had told her about it, probably spinning it as some kind of feminist empowerment story. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "If you made a mistake, something that hurt Dad's feelings, how would you handle it?" She was quiet for a moment. "Well, I suppose it would depend on the mistake. But honestly, Isolde, men can be awfully sensitive sometimes. They don't understand that women need to feel appreciated, to feel alive. If Ewan's upset about you having a little fun, maybe he should ask himself why you felt the need to go out in the first place." That made me feel slightly better. Maybe I wasn't entirely in the wrong here. Maybe Ewan was overreacting. But then I got an email that changed everything. It came from an anonymous Gmail account on Friday afternoon, with the subject line, "You should check your cloud." The message was short. "He already has access. You might want to check what's been backed up automatically. Photos, messages, location data, just a heads up from someone who's been there." My hand started shaking as I read it. I immediately opened my phone's cloud backup settings and realized with growing horror that everything had been syncing automatically for months. Photos, text messages, even my location history. If Ewan had access to our shared cloud account, which he did since he'd set up all our tech when we moved in together, he could see everything. Every message I'd exchanged with Luca that night, every photo Maya had taken, even the Uber receipts showing exactly where I'd gone and when. I spent my lunch break frantically trying to delete things, but it was too late. If he'd already seen it all, the damage was done. That evening, I tried to approach him directly. "Ewan, can we talk?" He was in the kitchen making dinner for Lila, something he'd been doing every night since our fight. "About what?" he asked without looking at me. "About last weekend. I know you're upset, and I want to explain." "There's nothing to explain, Isolde. I saw the video. I saw the messages. I know exactly what happened." My heart sank. It wasn't what it looked like. He finally turned to face me, and the look in his eyes was devastating. Not angry, just disappointed. "What was it then? Because it looked like my wife spent the night with another man while I was home taking care of our daughter." "It was just one night. It didn't mean anything. To you, maybe, but it meant something to me. Ewan, please, I made a mistake. I was feeling ignored and invisible, and I just wanted to feel attractive again. It was stupid, but it's over." "You felt ignored?" He set down the spatula and stared at me. "I work 60 hours a week to pay for this apartment, for Lila's school, for your gym membership and your shopping, and your nights out with friends. I come home exhausted and try to be present for our family. If that feels like being ignored, then I guess we want different things." "That's not what I meant." "I know exactly what you meant, Isolde. You wanted excitement. You wanted someone to make you feel special. And you were willing to destroy our marriage to get it." He turned back to the stove, effectively ending the conversation. That night, he moved his things into the guest room. I told myself it was temporary, that he just needed time to cool off. But when I woke up Saturday morning and found a folder labeled Timeline on the kitchen counter, I started to realize this might be bigger than I'd thought. Inside the folder were printouts, screenshots of Maya's Instagram story, my text messages with Luca, Uber receipts, even a map showing my location throughout that entire night. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note, for reference. The folder haunted me all weekend. Every time I walked past the kitchen counter, I could see it sitting there, like evidence in a criminal case, which, I was beginning to realize, might not be far from the truth. Ewan was methodical about everything: his work, his hobbies, even the way he organized our bills. I should have known he'd approach the situation the same way. But seeing it all laid out in black and white made my stomach turn. Sunday dinner at my parents' house was a disaster. My mum, Paula, had invited Ewan's mother, Nadine, thinking it would be nice for the families to get together. She had no idea she was walking into a war zone. Nadine Greaves was 60 years old and had never particularly liked me. She thought I was too dramatic, too focused on appearances, not serious enough for her precious son. She'd made that clear from the day Ewan and I got engaged. "How are things going, dear?" she asked me with that fake smile she always wore, the one that never reached her eyes. "Oh, you know how it is," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Busy with work and Lila's activities." "Mm-hmm. And how's married life treating you?" There was something in her tone that made me think she knew more than she was letting on. Had Ewan told her about the club? About Luca? My dad, Simon, was grilling burgers on the back patio, staying out of the conversation like he always did when things got tense. He'd perfected the art of conflict avoidance over 30 years of marriage to my mother. "Marriage is wonderful," I said, glancing at Ewan, who was sitting quietly beside Lila, helping her with a coloring book. "We're very happy." "That's lovely to hear," Nadine said. "Ewan's been working so hard lately, all those late nights at the office. I hope he's getting the support he needs at home." The implication was clear, and it made my face burn with embarrassment. "Of course he is," my mother jumped in. "Isolde's always been very supportive of Ewan's career." "I'm sure she has," Nadine said with that same fake smile. Lila looked up from her coloring book. "Daddy's been sad lately," she announced to the table. "He sleeps in the other room now." The silence that followed was deafening. "Lila, honey, why don't you go help Grandpa with the burgers?" I said quickly. But the damage was done. Both grandmothers were now staring at Ewan and me with obvious concern. "Is everything all right?" my mother asked. "Everything's fine," I said. "Ewan's just been having trouble sleeping, so he's using the guest room temporarily." Nadine raised an eyebrow. "How thoughtful of him to be so considerate of your sleep schedule." I wanted to scream. She was clearly taking shots at me, and everyone at the table could see it. After dinner, while the kids played in the backyard and the men cleaned up, Nadine cornered me in my mother's kitchen. "I don't know what's going on between you and my son," she said quietly, "but I can see that he's hurting. Ewan doesn't deserve to be treated poorly." "I'm not treating him poorly," I said defensively. "Aren't you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're taking him for granted. He's a good man, Isolde, a loyal husband and father. If you can't appreciate what you have, maybe you should think about what you're willing to lose." The conversation felt like a threat, and I didn't like it. "With all due respect, Nadine, what happens in my marriage is between Ewan and me." "Not when it affects my granddaughter," she said sharply. "Lila shouldn't have to see her parents fighting." "We're not fighting. We're just going through a rough patch." "A rough patch caused by what, exactly?" I couldn't answer that without admitting to the affair, so I just stared at her. "That's what I thought," she said, and walked away. The drive home was silent except for Lila chattering about her day. Ewan stared straight ahead, his jaw tight, while I tried to figure out how to salvage the situation. That night, after Lila was in bed, I tried again to talk to him. "Your mother hates me," I said, sitting on the edge of our bed while he packed more clothes into a suitcase. "She doesn't hate you. She's just protective of her family." "I'm family too." He stopped packing and looked at me. "Are you? Because lately it feels like you're just someone who lives here." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? When's the last time you asked about my day? When's the last time you seemed interested in anything I was doing? You complain that I'm distant, but you checked out of this marriage months ago." "That's not true." "Then why did you sleep with someone else?" The question hung in the air between us. I'd been avoiding thinking about it in those terms, but hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that scared me. It wasn't about you, I said finally. Everything you do affects me, Isolde. We're supposed to be partners. When you're unhappy, you should talk to me, not go find comfort with a stranger. I tried talking to you. You're always working or on your computer or dealing with something else. I felt invisible. So you decided to make yourself visible to someone else. It was one night, Ewan. One stupid mistake. No, he said, zipping up the suitcase. It was a choice. You chose to go out that night. You chose to flirt with him. You chose to go home with him. You chose to betray our marriage. None of that was an accident. He was right, and I hated him for it. So what now? You're just going to punish me forever? I'm not punishing you, I'm protecting myself. From what? From someone who thinks marriage is a game. He picked up his suitcase and headed for the door. Where are you going? Jonas offered to let me stay in his guest room for a while. I need some space to think. Jonas was Ewan's younger brother, 34 and divorced himself. I'd always suspected he didn't like me much either. What about Lila? We'll figure out a schedule. She shouldn't have to suffer because of our problems. Our problems? This is my fault now. He stopped at the door and turned back to me. Isolde, I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks. I've gone over every conversation we've had, every sign I might have missed, every way I could have been a better husband. But at the end of the day, you're the one who chose to cheat. You're the one who broke our marriage. So, yeah, this is your fault. After he left, I sat alone in our apartment and cried for the first time since this whole mess started. Not because I was sorry, though I was, but because I was finally starting to understand how much I'd lost. And the worst part was, I still didn't know how much worse it was going to get. Monday morning brought a new humiliation I hadn't anticipated. As I walked into the office, I noticed conversation stopping when I passed by. People who usually said good morning just nodded politely and looked away. By 10 a.m., I was called into HR. Jennifer Walsh, our human resources director, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd seen every kind of workplace drama imaginable. She gestured for me to sit down across from her desk and close the door. Isolde, I need to talk to you about some concerns that have been brought to my attention. My heart sank. What kind of concerns? There's been some discussion about your personal conduct over the weekend, social media posts that some employees have seen. I don't understand. What I do on my own time is my business. Normally, yes, but when it affects your professional reputation and creates gossip in the workplace, it becomes my business. We have a social media policy that all employees sign. I'd completely forgotten about the social media policy, something about maintaining professional standards and not engaging in behavior that could reflect poorly on the company. Jennifer, it was just a night out with friends. I wasn't representing the company. According to what I've heard, it was more than just a night out, and, unfortunately, several clients follow our employees on social media. We can't have our marketing team associated with this kind of behavior. What kind of behavior? Dancing at a club? She gave me a look that said she knew exactly what kind of behavior we were really talking about. I'm not going to discipline you at this time, but I need you to understand that your professional reputation is important. If this kind of thing continues, we'll have to have a more serious conversation. I left her office feeling like everyone was staring at me, which, it turned out, they were. Leah from accounts was openly smirking when I passed her desk. Rough morning, she asked. Just the usual Monday chaos, I said, trying to sound unaffected. I bet. Hey, did you see Maya's latest post? She's really going viral with all this family drama. My blood ran cold. What post? Leah turned her computer screen toward me. Maya had posted a series of tweets over the weekend that had been retweeted hundreds of times. Some people never grow up. And a family drama, adulting, is hard. When you're 32 but still acting like you're 22, Dar second-hand embarrassment. Plot twist, actions have consequences. Who could have seen that coming? Gash reality check. Each tweet had dozens of comments from people I didn't recognize, speculating about what was happening. Maya hadn't mentioned me by name, but anyone who knew our family would understand exactly who she was talking about. I called her immediately. Maya, what the hell is wrong with you? What do you mean? Those tweets. You're making this whole situation worse. I'm just sharing my thoughts on my own social media. It's not my fault people are interested. You're talking about my marriage. I'm talking about accountability. Maybe if you face some consequences for once in your life, you'd make better choices. This is none of your business. It became my business when you made it public. You can't cheat on your husband at a club where everyone can see you and then expect people to pretend it didn't happen. The word cheat hit me like a slap. Everyone was calling it cheating now. What had started as one night of fun had become this scarlet letter I couldn't escape. That afternoon, I tried to call Tasha to vent, but she didn't answer. When I texted her, she replied, "Can't talk right now. Things are crazy at work." But I could see on Instagram that she was out to lunch with other friends from the office. Friends who apparently didn't want to be associated with me anymore. The isolation was starting to feel overwhelming. When I picked Lila up from school that day, I noticed some of the other mums giving me strange looks. Had the gossip spread even there? "Mummy, why does Daddy live at Uncle Jonas's house now?" Lila asked as we drove home. "It's just temporary, sweetheart. Daddy's helping Uncle Jonas with some projects." "But why can't Uncle Jonas do the projects by himself? He's a grown-up." "Sometimes grown-ups need help with things." "Are you getting divorced like Emma's parents?" The question caught me off guard. Why would you ask that? Emma said when her daddy moved out, they told her it was temporary too, but then he never came back. I pulled over to the side of the road, my hands shaking. "Lila, look at me. Daddy and I are just having some grown-up problems right now, but we both love you very much. No matter what happens, that will never change." "But are you getting divorced?" I wanted to tell her no, that everything would be fine, that Daddy would come home soon and we'd be a family again. But looking into her 8-year-old eyes, I realized I couldn't make that promise. "I don't know, baby. I hope not." That evening, Ewan came by to pick up more of his things. I tried to talk to him while he packed. "People at work are treating me like a pariah," I said. "Maya's posting about our business on Twitter. This is getting out of hand." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair in public." "It wasn't in public. It was one night that got blown out of proportion." "Isolde, you went home with another man. How is that blown out of proportion?" "Because everyone's acting like I'm some kind of monster, like I'm the first person who ever made a mistake." "You keep calling it a mistake, like you accidentally tripped and fell into bed with someone." "You made a series of deliberate choices." "Fine, I made bad choices, but does that mean I deserve to lose everything? My friends, my reputation, my family?" He stopped packing and looked at me with something that might have been pity. "You didn't lose those things, Isolde. You traded them. You traded our marriage for one night with a stranger. You traded your reputation for a few hours of feeling desired. You traded our family's stability for whatever thrill you got from cheating on me. I never meant for any of this to happen. But you knew it could happen. You knew there were risks, and you decided they were worth it." He was right, and I was running out of arguments. So what happens now? Now I figure out what I want my life to look like without someone who thinks so little of our marriage that she's willing to destroy it for entertainment. I don't think little of our marriage. Yes, you do. If you valued what we had, you never would have risked losing it. After he left, I found myself alone in our apartment, surrounded by all the things we'd bought together, all the photos of our life as a family. For the first time, I started to wonder if I'd lost him for good, and for the first time, I started to realize that maybe I deserved to. 3 weeks after Ewan moved out, I was still telling myself this was all temporary. He was hurt and angry, but eventually he'd calm down and we'd figure out how to move forward. People got past infidelity all the time. We had a daughter together, a life we'd built. Surely that meant something. I was wrong. The first sign that this was bigger than I'd realized came when I tried to access our joint savings account to pay Lila's school tuition. The password had been changed. I called the bank, but they told me that any account holder could change the login credentials. If I wanted access, I'd need to go to a branch with proper identification and reset everything in person. When I did that, I discovered that Ewan had been meticulously documenting every transaction for months. Not just recent ones, everything going back to when we'd first opened the account. The bank representative showed me printouts of automatic transfers, bill payments, even small purchases I'd forgotten about. "Is there a problem with the account?" I asked. "No, ma'am. The other account holder just requested detailed statements for what looks like financial planning purposes." Financial planning, or divorce preparation. That same week, I noticed other changes. Ewan had updated the emergency contact information at Lila's school to list his brother Jonas as the secondary contact instead of me. He'd also apparently spoken to her teachers about the family situation because they started giving me sympathetic looks when I dropped her off. "How are you holding up?" Mrs. Patterson, Lila's teacher, asked me one morning. "We're doing fine," I said, though Lila had been asking about her father every day and seemed increasingly anxious. These transitions can be hard on children. If you need any resources for family counseling or support groups, I have some information. Resources for what? I wanted to ask. We weren't getting divorced. This was just a rough patch. But then I got home and found an envelope that had been slipped under our door. Inside were copies of legal documents I didn't recognize at first. Custody schedules, property inventories, financial disclosures. At the bottom of the stack was a business card for a family law attorney and a handwritten note. "We need to talk. Meet me at this office Thursday at 2 p.m. E." My hands were shaking as I read through everything. He'd been planning this for weeks, maybe longer. Every detail was accounted for. Our apartment lease, our shared debts, even Lila's school and activity schedules. I called him immediately. "Ewan, what is this?" "Legal documents. I thought that was obvious." "You're filing for divorce?" "I'm preparing to file for divorce. There's a difference." Without even talking to me about it. "What's to talk about, Isolde? You cheated on me. You've shown no real remorse. You keep calling it a mistake instead of acknowledging what you actually did. What exactly did you think was going to happen?" "I thought we'd work through it. I thought you'd forgive me." Forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things. I might forgive you eventually, for my own peace of mind, but I'm never going to trust you again. You can't just give up on our marriage. I'm not giving up on anything. I'm accepting reality. You gave up on our marriage the night you decided to sleep with someone else. Please, Ewan, can we at least try counseling? For Lila's sake? Lila is exactly why I'm doing this. She deserves to see what a healthy relationship looks like, and this isn't it. The meeting at the law office was even worse than I'd imagined. Ewan's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca Martinez, had prepared a presentation that laid out everything in excruciating detail. Financial records showing exactly how our money had been spent, screenshots of social media posts, text messages between Luca and me that I thought had been deleted, even GPS data from my phone showing my exact location that night. "How did you get all of this?" I asked. "Most of it was already accessible through shared accounts and cloud storage," Rebecca explained. "The rest was obtained through perfectly legal means." "This feels like stalking." "This is documentation," Ewan said quietly. "Everything here is factual. Nothing has been fabricated or taken out of context." Rebecca continued her presentation, outlining Ewan's proposed custody arrangement. He wanted primary physical custody of Leela, with me having visitation every other weekend and one evening per week. That's not fair, I said. She's my daughter, too. And you'll still be her mother, Rebecca said. But Mr. Greaves has been the primary caregiver since you've been dealing with your personal issues. What personal issues? She gestured to a folder thick with printouts. Your workplace reprimand for social media conduct. The ongoing family conflicts documented on your sister's Twitter account. The fact that you've been staying out late several nights a week since the initial incident. I had been going out more often, but only because staying home alone in our empty apartment was depressing. I'd been meeting friends for drinks, trying to rebuild my social connections after people started avoiding me. I'm not an unfit mother. No one is saying you are, but stability is important for children, and right now, Mr. Greaves can provide more of that. The property division was equally devastating. Because we'd never bought a house together, most of our assets were easily divisible. But Ewan had been the primary breadwinner, and he'd apparently been saving money I didn't even know about. I'll need to find a new place to live, I realized. The lease on your current apartment expires in 3 months, Rebecca said. That should give you time to make arrangements. Where am I supposed to go? That's not really our concern, she said, though not unkindly. But I'm sure you'll figure something out. After the meeting, Ewan walked me to my car. This doesn't have to be ugly, he said. If you agree to the terms we've outlined, we can handle this quietly and quickly. And if I don't agree, then we'll go to court and everything becomes public record. All of it. The affair, the social media drama, the workplace issues. Is that really what you want? I want my family back. That's not an option anymore, Isolde. The only choice you have now is how difficult you want to make this for everyone involved. That night, I called my mother. Mom, Ewan's filing for divorce. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. What can your father and I do to help? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. He has lawyers and documents and evidence of everything. I feel like I'm drowning. Maybe you should get your own lawyer. With what money? He's controlling our bank accounts now. We can help with that. This is important. But even as she said it, I knew it was probably too late. Ewan had been planning this for weeks while I'd been pretending everything would work out. He had every advantage, and I had nothing but regrets. The divorce papers were served to me at work on a Tuesday morning in May. The process server was professional and discreet, but having legal documents delivered to my office felt like the final humiliation in a long series of them. Jennifer from HR called me into her office again that afternoon. Isolde, I'm sorry to hear about your personal situation. Thank you, I said, though I wondered how she already knew. Unfortunately, we need to discuss how this might affect your position here. My stomach dropped. Are you firing me? Not at this time, but there have been ongoing concerns about your performance and professional conduct. The personal issues seem to be affecting your work, and we need to address that. She was right. I'd been distracted for weeks, missing deadlines, making careless mistakes. My mind was constantly occupied with the divorce proceedings and custody arrangements. I understand. I'll do better. I hope so, but I want you to know that we're going to be monitoring your performance closely going forward. That evening, I met with the lawyer my parents had hired for me. David Chen was younger than Ewan's attorney and seemed less prepared for the complexity of our case. I'll be honest with you, Isolde, this is going to be difficult. Your husband has been very thorough in documenting everything, and adultery is still grounds for fault-based divorce in this state. What does that mean for me? It means he has significant leverage in negotiations. The custody arrangement he's proposing is actually quite generous, considering the circumstances. Generous? I only get to see my daughter every other weekend. You'll also have dinner with her every Wednesday and alternating holidays. Plus, he's not asking for spousal support, which he could potentially do given the income disparity. I hadn't thought about spousal support. Ewan made almost twice what I did. What are my options? You can fight it, but that will be expensive and probably unsuccessful. Or you can negotiate for minor modifications and try to move forward. What would you recommend? Honestly, take the deal. It's better than what you'd likely get in court. The final settlement meeting was held at Rebecca Martinez's office on a Friday afternoon. Both sets of parents were there, which made everything more tense. My mother kept whispering suggestions to me that made no sense legally. Ewan's mother sat silently beside him, occasionally nodding approvingly at something his lawyer said. Before we finalize everything, Rebecca said, I want to make sure Mrs. Greaves understands the terms. She went through it all again. Primary custody to Ewan, visitation schedule for me, division of assets, no spousal support in either direction. Do you have any questions? She asked. I looked across the table at Ewan, who had been quiet throughout the entire process. He looked tired but resolved, like someone who had made a difficult decision and was committed to seeing it through. Can I ask you something? I said to him directly. Of course. Do you hate me? The question seemed to surprise him. He was quiet for a long moment before answering. No, Isolde, I don't hate you, but I don't trust you, and I don't want to be married to someone I can't trust. People make mistakes. People change. You're right, they do, but some mistakes have consequences that can't be undone. This is one of them. So that's it. 8 years of marriage and you're just done? 8 years of marriage, and you threw it away for one night with a stranger. Yes, I'm done. The finality in his voice was devastating. I signed the papers. 3 months later, I was living in a small one-bedroom apartment across town, seeing Lila every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. The transition had been hard on her, but she was adjusting better than I'd expected. Ewan had been scrupulously fair about everything. He never spoke badly about me in front of Lila, always made sure she had everything she needed when she was with me, and even helped me move into my new place. You don't have to be nice to me, I told him as he carried boxes up to my apartment. I'm not doing this for you, he said. I'm doing it for Lila. She needs to see that her parents can be civil to each other. He was right, as usual. My social life had slowly started to rebuild itself. Some of the friends who had distanced themselves during the worst of the drama had gradually come back around. Tasha and I were speaking again, though our friendship would never be the same. Maya had eventually apologized for the Twitter posts, admitting that she'd been caught up in the drama and had probably made things worse than they needed to be. I just couldn't believe you actually did it, she said over coffee one Saturday. I mean, I knew you were unhappy, but I never thought you'd actually cheat. Neither did I admitted. Until I did. Do you regret it? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. I regret how I handled everything after. I regret the lying and the justifications, and the way I treated Ewan when he was trying to process what I'd done. But do I regret the night itself? I honestly don't know. What do you mean? I mean, it woke me up to some things about myself that I needed to face. I was unhappy in my marriage, but instead of dealing with that directly, I acted out. I was feeling invisible and unappreciated, but instead of communicating that, I went looking for validation somewhere else. So what now? Now I figure out how to be a good co-parent and a good mother, and maybe eventually a better person than I was. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Luca at a coffee shop downtown. He recognized me immediately. Hey, it's Isolde, right? From the Perch? Yeah, hi. How have you been? I haven't seen you around. I've been better, I said honestly. That night we met kind of changed everything for me. Oh, good changed or bad changed? Expensive changed. I'm divorced now. His expression shifted from friendly to uncomfortable. Shit. I'm sorry. I had no idea you were going through something like that. It's not your fault. I made my own choices. Still, if I'd known it would cause problems, you would have what? Not slept with a married woman who was throwing herself at you. Come on, Luca, we both knew what we were doing. He nodded, looking relieved that I wasn't blaming him. Are you okay, though? Like, really okay? I'm getting there. It's been a hard year, but I'm learning things about myself I probably needed to learn. That's good, I guess. Growth and all that. Yeah, growth and all that. As I walked home that day, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago. Married, secure, taking everything for granted. I'd felt invisible and unappreciated, but I'd had a family and a stable life. Now I was alone in a small apartment, seeing my daughter every other weekend, rebuilding my reputation and my relationships from scratch. But I was also more honest with myself than I'd been in years. I'd destroyed my marriage for one night of feeling desired. I'd traded my family's stability for a few hours of excitement. I'd hurt the people I loved most because I was too selfish and too cowardly to deal with my unhappiness directly. Those were hard truths, but they were truths, and for the first time in my adult life, I was facing the consequences of my actions without trying to blame someone else or minimize what I'd done. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd earned, and maybe, eventually, I'd figure out how to make it a good one. Ewan had moved on too. I'd heard through Lila that he was dating someone new, a woman named Sarah who worked at his company. Lila liked her, which stung a little but was probably good for everyone involved. When I picked Lila up for dinner one Wednesday evening, I saw Sarah briefly as she was leaving Ewan's apartment. She was pretty in a quiet, understated way. She smiled politely when Ewan introduced us, and I could see why he was attracted to her. She seemed steady, reliable, trustworthy, all the things I hadn't been. She seems nice, I told him. She is. I'm glad you're happy. Thank you. I hope you find happiness too, Isolde. For Lila's sake, if nothing else. I'm working on it. And I was. It was slow, difficult work, but I was finally doing it. The joke I'd thought I was playing on the universe had turned out to be on me. I'd proven I could still get attention from other men, but I'd lost the attention that actually mattered.